Okay. Organic does not necessarily mean safe, and natural doesn't necessarily mean safe. And on the same vein, synthetic does not necessarily mean highly toxic. Everything is a poison if it's used in the great enough amount, or in some cases a small amount. This individual, he must have been kind of a philosopher. Paracelsus was his name. All substances are poisons. There is none which is not a poison. The right dose differentiates a poison from a remedy. And there's some more quotes by him if you look up his name on the internet. Brainy quote with his name, and you'll get some good ones. Okay. So what we're all about here is to reduce the risk of exposure or risk to ourselves. And labels help us manage the risk. So the formula is very simple. Toxicity times exposure equals the risk. Now, we can't do anything about the toxicity of the product because that's in its formulation, but we can do something about the exposure. So that's what how we can control the variable here in this formula. And we usually get injured by pesticides in 3 ways. We inhale it, it gets on our skin, or it gets in our mouth. So you can imagine how children usually get into it and how it gets into their systems by the mouth. And with adults or applicators, how would you think? Does it usually get into their system? Absorbed, yeah, through the skin or through the eyes. Okay, so again, that formula, toxicity times exposure equals risk, and we want to reduce the exposure. And of course, get the right product for the job. Okay. So the risks here, we have acute and chronic exposure to pesticides. What's the difference? What is acute? Yep, it happens right away. Acute happens right away, and chronic occurs over a long period of time. And so that's why you always want to wear your protective gear, because it can save you either way. Okay. Here we have our model, and we're going to try to pick out what areas are most susceptible to pesticide absorption. We'll use the forearm as kind of the baseline as a 1.0. So compared to the forearm, what do you think are the most susceptible areas of the body to being having some pesticide absorption? Chest, lungs, okay. And if we are just going to stay on the outside using our forearm as the baseline. Hands, okay. Hands actually, if you want to jot these down, is a 1.6. And okay, the ball of the foot is a 1.6. even though we should be wearing leather shoes, or not leather shoes, but rubber shoes. Yeah, no leather or no canvas. Okay. The most susceptible areas are the head is a 3.7, and the groin is an 11.8. Yep. Okay, so here, if you want to jot those down, the scalp, I think I said 3.7. Your ear canal actually is a 5.4. Well, this is 1.3 on the palm of your hand. Okay, your groin area is almost 12. Your abdomen is 2.1. Your forehead is 4.2. So when we talk about wearing the protective personal equipment, PPE, there's a good reason for that. You know, it's to keep your body protected from being an absorption site for these pesticides. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the agricultural health study, which is kind of the benchmark for pesticide applicators. The study has been going since 1993, and it is involved over 89,000 applicators and their spouses in Iowa and North Carolina. This is a pretty well-respected study. They're still putting out results. They looked at how genetic factors affect the population, you know, how exposure to pesticides affect the health. And the collaborators are the National Cancer Institute, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, EPA, and National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So, pretty legitimate there. So they looked at the risk factors, you know, your diet, your habits, your pesticide use, knowing that not everybody responds to things in the same way. Some people are predisposed to certain diseases. So beginning in 2012, these are some of the findings, and I think that's in your handout. Overall, farmers are pretty healthy. They do have a higher risk for developing some cancers, especially prostate cancer, which now doesn't surprise you. Rotenone and paraquat, an insecticide and herbicide, are linked to increased use of developing Parkinson's. Gloves matter, and the right kind of gloves matter. Accidental high pesticide exposure events may affect health in later life. Diabetes and thyroid disease risk increase with organochlorine chemicals. And I had that organochlorine are like DDT, which I don't think you can get anymore. Even pesticide poisoning may increase the depression of applicators' wives. That's a curious one. Whether, you know, they get some absorption too, or whether it's just the condition of the spouse. Protective gloves and workplace hygiene reduce risk of Parkinson's. And high exposure spills are more likely to experience molecular changes on DNA. That was just out earlier this year. And I think your handout says 16, but that should be 2017. So the bottom line from all of this is using your personal protective equipment can reduce exposure and risk. And good handling practices reduce exposure. Good cleanup helps reduce risk to your family. If you've been out working and with some pesticides, take your shoes or boots off at the front door. Don't track into the house. That residue can get into the house. And we'll talk a little bit later here about doing some laundry. Here are examples of the protective equipment. Goggles. Oh, we should back up a minute. Personal protective equipment, we'll go to the next slide here. This fellow has his long sleeve shirt, his chemical resistant gloves, his long pants, probably got socks on, and he's got his rubber boots. So he's pretty well protected. This is the minimum. Maybe he's even got some goggles on under there. So if the label says to wear goggles, wear goggles. If it says to wear a respirator, wear a respirator. Now, these respirators have cartridges that can actually expire, which I didn't know until not too long ago. And you have to store them and, just watch pay attention to the expiration date. And if you use these, like at the end of the day, wash your goggles and your respirator out, and your gloves. And all gloves are not the same. Sometimes the label will actually say what mil or thickness to use, so pay attention to that. You never want to use your dishwashing gloves for pesticides. You want to use unlined gloves if there's any liquid, it doesn't stick to the lining and then get on your skin.
If you're wearing rubber galoshes, should those be rinsed off in the yard?
Yes, rubber galoshes, rinse off in the yard. I would, where you apply the pesticide, or at least, kind of hold them up over the grass. Well, yeah. But that's probably a good idea. I would think that product could probably eat through the rubber eventually. Okay, here, I'm going to give you this.
Just a question. Reading this yesterday, I was shocked about the percentages, about the genital areas being 11%, close to 12%. Why is that? Where your neck and ears are not covered here. And a lot of times I'll have maybe 3/4 length shirt on, but have a little gloves on, but have a little bit of skin shown there. Mm-hmm. But why is that part most at risk?
I would say because it's a very soft and delicate part of your body. Your head and your arms, the skin is tougher, I would say, and a lot of times there's cancers in the most vulnerable parts of your body, ovarian cancer and prostate cancers. I think because they're very active parts of your body. This is just my thinking out loud, which is never a good thing. But that's why you want to wear, if it says wear a chemical resistant apron, you want to put that on, because to protect your whole body. I don't see Terry around, but she might have some additional insight. We can ask her when she comes back. Okay. Even when you do the laundry, and you want to do the laundry in the hottest water you have, in the most water you have, maybe a challenge with these new washing machines that are water saving. You may have to wash your clothes twice. But you want to be careful and handle the clothes with the same protective gloves that you would wear handling the product. And of course, if the clothes are soaked, don't even try to wash them. Just throw them away. Put them in a plastic bag and throw them away. It's not worth it. So if you wash your clothes twice with these high efficiency machines with low water, also then rinse the washing machine out on empty with hot water afterwards to help eliminate any residues. Somebody had asked the question before our break about why is the genital area more susceptible than to like an exposed part of your body. And just in a quick look, it just says that these areas are more susceptible and they're higher absorbing. So that's the short answer, and there's probably a lot more to it.
I wonder if it has to do with how many pores, skin pores, that if the sweat comes out, maybe it absorbs back in through your pores. Probably some parts of your body have more pores than others.
That's right. And there was a study on if you sweat while applying pesticides, does that increase or decrease the absorption? Because you might think the sweat's a barrier, or you might think that your pores open more. And it's the latter. The pores open more, and so more can get inside you while you're sweating.